You guys might want to know that we
Oh, well, I don't look like Lisa. But when Lisa and I were together last week getting these things ready, she and I were talking about this presentation. I said, what could I do? And she said, move towards the slide because you talk way too much. So I'm very excited that Lisa and actually Tim and Eliza are here. The last time we did an update, I was not here. So the amount of things that have changed since February of February of this year have been immense. So pretty excited that Lisa and Eliza and Tim will get to share with you kind of where we're headed.
Thanks, Tony. As you can see, this vision has been up here a couple of times for you to see. This was created in conjunction with our guiding coalition and our high ability coordinators, as well as our values. So anytime we get them together, any high ability teachers, coordinators, any staff, these are at the forefront of our decision making and how we're going to approach high ability in any aspect. So as I mentioned, last year our guiding coalition got together and worked extremely hard to chart a course for the upcoming 3 years. This was a result of all of their time, talents, and efforts as we were able to establish a tiered level of support for our high ability students. We were able to implement strong high ability curriculum, establish a professional development schedule, implement parent nights, and coordinate efforts for our social emotional learning for our high ability students. So as you can see on the left is our goals for the end of this year. So as we're looking at those, as far as an update, about 50% of our cluster self-contained teachers have been trained in junior grade books. So the goal is by the end of May, we are fully staffed with trained and materials in front of those teachers. Our principals annually will complete a cluster group training. This March was their first training, and so that will continue to develop and evolve as we move forward. Our licensed teachers have the opportunity to attend state and national conferences. So this year we have 9 folks who will be traveling to the national conference to learn from the best in the country. We also are working to develop a high ability web page, so it would be a linked page on the main page to specifically draw parents' attention to how kids are identified in our district, what services we offer, and then specific resources that they can reach out to as far as supporting their high ability students. Our goal was to have an annual high ability district-wide parent night that would become an annual event. This year we hosted our first one in September. We probably had about 110 families there. The highlight of the night was definitely the showcase from the Roosevelt students playing the drums as the students came in. They showcased their talents that they're also doing outside of their academics, and we were able to provide an overview of high ability services and then have some breakouts related to the different levels of service. So we had a breakout for our Roosevelt program, breakout for our cluster classroom, middle school, and high school. And so we continue to hope that this event will grow in its popularity as people are coming to learn more about what's happening in high ability. Additionally, as a result, we are looking to host our first annual district-wide newly identified parent night. So as we conclude our high ability identifications this winter and into the early spring, these families who have newly identified students will be welcome to come to an evening to learn what it means to be a high ability student, what it means to be a high ability student at Elkhart Community Schools, and what expectations they can anticipate. So as you're looking at these highlights, there's a couple things you might notice are missing. We do not have middle school or high school on this plan as of right now. We currently have a middle school guiding coalition working to establish what high ability services will look like at the middle school, what high ability curriculum will look like at the middle school for this year. And then in the following year, we'll take a look at the high school curriculum and services, as well as adding innovations in creativity and leadership. So annually, each year, we receive a high ability grant from the state of Indiana. It is a state mandate that we identify and serve high ability students in Indiana, and so you can see that dollar amount up there is not that significant in the grand scheme of things. High ability and gifted and talented is not a federally mandated law, and so unfortunately we don't receive any federal dollars for high ability students. So as you look at the students there, that gives you an estimate, kind of a breakdown per student. You can think about that math, but overall, those funds are pretty quickly spent. So about a quarter of those funds are spent on high ability testing for identification purposes. A quarter of those are spent for paying our high ability coordinators, for training, for stipends for obtaining their high ability licenses, and any of those professional development dollars outside of their school day. Another quarter is spent on professional development and obtaining high ability licensures for our staff members, which leaves about $10,000 for those 1,300 students to spend on curriculum and supplemental materials. So I think it's really awesome that we have a district that supports high ability. That's winning half of the battle. When we can group those kids together, that's even stronger. When we have curriculum for our high ability students, that's even better. But when you find the right teachers to put in front of high ability students, there's nothing better. And so we were extremely lucky to find Tim and Eliza to get in front of our students at Roosevelt. These are absolutely the right people to be in front of our grades 3 through 6 students. They are problem solvers in their own right. They have growth mindset themselves. They hold themselves to high standards, and they continually persist to make things right and better for our high ability students. So I invited them tonight to talk to you a little bit about that transition to our self-contained program and just highlight a few of the things that they've done here in the first quarter. So I'm going to welcome Eliza, if we wanted to lead us off.
Our buddy Ryan's going to click on this is awesome.
Okay.
Are you there? I need.
Oh, I can send it though. Okay, all right. Moving up to the next slide. So Tim is our 3-4 teacher. And we'll come back and.
By the time we're back, you'll have access.
Hi, my name is Tim Myers. As they said, I'm the 3rd and 4th grade split teacher at Roosevelt, and it is an honor to work with these children. I was told today by my kids that I spoke way too much at school today. They're not hesitant to tell me when I'm overreaching my bounds and what I should be teaching. Part of it was we were talking about standards and essential standards and getting them really moving on that. So what I thought I would do is, instead of letting me talk to you about what's going on in my classroom, we'll just do a little 2 minutes preview of what is going on in my classroom. And then I can share with you after we're finished some of the reasons I highlighted the video and what I put into the video. And then if you have any questions, I don't know when questions happen with this, you can ask them of me and you can see it that way. And I would like to say that they are far more interesting than I will ever be. That's why I'm a teacher. I like kids. So if you could go ahead and click the play and expand it, that would be good. So just to highlight a few pieces of the video, the first part was the Moving to Indiana project, which they were to explain to a pioneer in the 1600s why you would want to move to Indiana and the advantages of coming. The three students I chose, one, she came up to me immediately and said, "Can I do it as a rap?" And I said, "Go for it," and that's what we got. The video was, she's not a professional rapper, but her attitude and the information that she was providing was top notch. You only saw this much, there's a lot more to it. The second video was a girl who, I haven't done anything with green screens in my classroom. So she did all that on her own. She went and learned it. She actually learned it like 2 or 3 years ago when she realized that her room at her house was painted in all green walls. And her parents related by the fact that accidentally they moved into a house with green walls, and Teresa was able to take whatever avenue she wanted to show how well she could use the technology. And then the third one is what I consider a Roosevelt mixed story. She was a student who was identified in language arts, almost there in math, and we thought we should bring her along with us because everybody said that she would be perfect for what we're doing in high ability. And the traditional kind of report was something that she came up with, again, all on her own. And the entire report is like what we'd have done in college. It started off with an introduction, had the paragraphs in the middle and a conclusion with all the, and she didn't want to show her face because she's too embarrassed. So it was a way for her to show me what she knows without the idea of having to be on the movie. The project also allowed kids to just stand up and do a report. And there was one boy who didn't get his movie done, but instead of doing it over the weekend, he said, "Mr. Myers, may I come up and just do the report?" And it ended up being a wonderful thing. So one of the ideas that I fully embrace in my class is showing you what you know in any way that is going to work for certain projects that we're doing. It won't be for every project, but getting to know what they can do and how they can do it is very important. The other projects were different kinetic things that I do in class to make sure that they're moving and not sitting and listening. Today's not a good example of it, like I said, but it's a chance for them to shine in a way that they have not been able to shine in the general education courses. So far, they're responding wonderfully. I had during my what do we have last week? Conferences last week, I had probably either 4 or 5 parents tell me, "I'm so happy they're in here because they're not complaining about coming to school anymore. They can't wait to come to school anymore. He's not coming home crying on the bus anymore because of how boring of a day, how bad of a day." So it's making a difference for these 14 that I have, and I have to assume it's making a difference for Eliza's as well, that the transition, you asked how the transition's going. It's bumpy, to be 100% honest, but it is 100% worth it because I'm seeing these 14 kids blossom in front of me, and parents are tending to agree that their kids have blossomed. So that's all I have. If you have any questions now, or will be later.
Now if they want.
I guess it's your meeting, so you tell me.
And maybe what we do is let Eliza present, and then because they're both Roosevelt, then you can ask Roosevelt questions to both of them. Yeah.
So I'm the 5-6 teacher, and I have currently 19 combinations, about split evenly, almost 19, but 5th and 6th graders. And so in terms of transition, our theme for our class this year was kind of "This is us." And so moving on, this is us, and this was before, this was like the first week of school, so some people were in that. But the theme is "This is us" because many of these kids, as they transition to a self-contained, high-ability classroom, they are coming from situations where they kind of felt very me, they were maybe feeling alone, like no one else, they weren't really connecting with anyone else in their class. They might have been thinking that others were thinking of you, kind of as not part of the class, but you are high ability or I am high ability. And what I really am trying to create in the transition for them is the concept of it takes the me's and the you's to create the us. So there's a big emphasis on community and what exactly that means as a self-contained, like-minded group of students. How do we learn to interact with each other and learn together, not in isolation, but with each other. So the next slide is something that I show. I often use optical illusions at the very beginning of the year with high ability students to give examples of how it's okay to see things from different perspectives, and that one of their unique talents is that they often do see things from a different perspective. Not that they're better, not that there's a right or a wrong, but just an awareness of their perspective might be different than others. So these are kind of fun to look at. I mean, the teacher, you have to explain them. So the one in the left corner, the tree, and then there's actually two faces. So just talking to them, like, what do you see first? And then having them interact a bit with each other in, like, it takes a while for some people to find the silhouettes, and some people saw the silhouettes right away. The one on the top right is probably maybe familiar to a lot of people, but the rabbit versus the duck. So there's a rabbit looking to the right, his ears are to the left, or you might see a duck with his beak to the left and his eye on the right. So it creates some really good conversations, and it takes, in this kind of way, it kind of takes the academics out, and so it helps them just relate to each other as people and as thinkers, not as the smart ones, or not as the A students, or not the pressure of needing to get the best score. And probably the one that gets the most conversation is that bottom one, in terms of those tabletops are the same size. So they look, because of the way they're positioned, they look so different, but the optical illusion I can't show you from here. But if you put a measuring on each end, they're actually the same size, and that's a real eye-opener for them, and also a real good illustration of who they are as high-ability students. And a lot of times, the general population assumes that they're completely different than the rest, but really they have a lot of things in common. They just think differently. So that has been helpful in the transition as they come in kind of with a kind of the notion that they're smarter, better, whatever, and that's important to me, that in the transition they realize that they think differently. This one is, I forgot one thing, but we all know the phrase, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him thirsty, or we think of it as you can't make him drink. And my challenge as a high ability teacher is you can't make them thirsty, or can you? So the real challenge for these kids, they are capable of drinking. They have a full brain and full stomach, and the problem is they're not particularly thirsty. And so what I want them to learn is how to be thirsty so that they want to keep drinking, and it's not just water thrown at them that's easily lapped up. So my challenge to them is to learn to be thirsty, and my challenge as a teacher for them is to teach them how to be okay being thirsty. So one thing, you can go, like Tim said, in talking with my students, I did not make a video, but I did talk to them. And 4 consistent themes came out in terms of what they like or what they feel like is different about their experience so far in the self-contained compared to the general classroom. And the 4 things that kept repeating, and these are kind of some examples, the pacing. So for many of them, it's the pacing, whether that's the pacing of instruction, it goes a little bit faster. So what some people might take, or a general population might take a week or 2 weeks to really understand, they can pick up in one lesson and then start using it. And they're used to kind of going through a lot of practice and not actually using the skill. So the pacing of that, and also the ability to be individually paced. So as soon as they understand it, they're moving on to something else, rather than waiting for everyone to catch up. So pacing was a consistent theme with them. Also the projects, like Tim showed, the variety of the project, the ability for the project to have lots of choice, for them to write, for them to draw, for them to create, for them to make a video, for them to be interviewed. There's just a lot of different, a variety of projects, and that's something that they have appreciated so far. They've talked about their peers. So like-minded peers, being able to do projects with like-minded peers kind of eliminates that feeling that they may have had in the past where they're doing all the work. So they're put in a group with some people that aren't working hard or aren't at their level, and then they have the burden of doing it all. So when you're in a self-contained class, what they have appreciated is that group is all fairly productive because they're all trying to be thirsty at the same level. And also the consistent challenge they have mentioned. So for many of them, they're coming from situations where they've had isolated challenges, or they finish the work, and so then they go and they go to the challenge, or they go to the enrichment, and then they go back to the work, and then a couple weeks later or whatever, they get to do the challenge. And so one thing that's different for them that they have mentioned is the challenge is just consistent. It's part of the instruction. It's part of their day. It's not, now I get to do the challenge. So we've talked a lot about how our brains work, and that's another thing in getting them to learn who they are as learners themselves. The right brain, left brain, they've become familiar with that. And so in this kind of environment, they're able to use both sides of the brain in terms of their project choices, or stretch themselves to tap into the side of the brain that they don't necessarily aren't used to. So that's been a positive. Do I have one more? Yes. So again, another thing to go with our kind of the way the classroom runs, which has been helpful, is we have a list, fly, score format. So many of them are coming into this classroom with an ability or a history of soaring through standards pretty quickly and pretty easily. And my challenge to them is that really learning to be a 3-step process. They need to go through the struggle of lists, that when you're trying to get that kite to fly, how frustrating it is when you can't get it off the ground. And too many of them have not experienced that lift because they've just been able to soar right away. So we do a lot of lifting, and it's uncomfortable, but they like it because they're just not used to it. And then they move on to flying, and if they feel like they're flying in a skill, that means it's kind of up and down, and they're not struggling, but they feel like there's kind of, it ebbs and flows. And then the ultimate goal for them, for the skills that are more of the state standards or beyond, is to reach that soaring level, and then realizing they're going to end up lifting again. That once you soar, you're not done, but there's more lifting, flying, and soaring to be had. So overall, the transition has gone well. Again, I have, as 5th and 6th graders, they're 2 years more in, well, minus COVID, 2 years more in the school system, kind of entrenched into the habits of learning and perception of what school is. So there's a little bit more of maybe a hard shell to crack in terms of a 6th grader who has gone all the way through elementary school. Soaring is a little shocking to the system to be lifting now, but they like it because they're tapping into parts of their mind and parts of their learning that they haven't really had a chance to do consistently before. So it's been a positive experience. They have positive things to say. I just don't have it on a video, and it's a good place to be. They like coming to school, and it's a positive. So far, it's been a very positive experience for them as learners and for me as.
If two of you share just for a second some of the things you're doing together with the other Roosevelt students, your Roosevelt program, and how you're part of Roosevelt.
Yeah, so one of the ways that's one of the challenges that we're aware of, and we want to be part of the Roosevelt community. And so one way that's done is the special, so the extracurriculars that we are immersed into a general grade level for that. So like my class goes to all the 5th grade specials and is mixed in with other Roosevelt 5th grade, the other Roosevelt 5th graders for specials, and then also for lunch. And so that's a daily interaction. And then there's also, we're in the work with our SEL, education, social emotional, connecting them that way. And project-wise, just
in the work. They're a little farther ahead than I am with that, so I'll let them share.
So right now, we're in conversations, and we have plans in January. Ms. Saeed, who's the third grade teacher who has the cluster, we're doing a, what's it called, what's the actual? Greenhouse project, thank you. I knew it was about plants, I just forgot the name of the project. Greenhouse project, where we'll be meeting with mixed classes or classes that are together for 2 or 3 days a week, working in plants, math, and English language arts, pulling the 3 together into one project. So we have that plan to help integrate the community.
Lisa has more to talk about with the rest of high ability in the district, but do you have any questions for Seminole Life?
Thank you.
No, keep up the good work.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, as I said, we are very lucky that the 2 of them chose to take on this journey with us. And just to reiterate what Eliza was saying, the kids, I started a cookies and conversations meeting with a pocket of kids to find out how they're viewing things from their point of view. And they pointed out that pacing was one of the things that excites them the most, the level of challenge. And then even just one comment was, I used to be in a class and my teacher thought I was high ability, so they thought I knew how to write a complete sentence and a complete paragraph, and I was never taught that, and now I know how to do that. So just some of those basic skills that we assume high ability kids can do, they're able to pull those kids and get those skills addressed as well. So as I talked about, we have a middle school high ability coalition getting together this year. You can see the timeline as we're working through. We had our first meeting in September, again, to review the demographics at the 3 middle schools, to look at what is required by Indiana code and law, and then to use the National Association of Gifted Children's programming standards to ensure we're doing what's best for our kids. And so as we start to look at moving forward, you'll see in March, we hope to come back and share with you what our recommendations would be for middle school services and curriculum to move forward for the following school year. We started this evening having middle school discussions with our honors teachers. One thing that I've noticed is we do not have a clear course description guide for a regular class at the middle school and an honors class, so that parents, administrators, teachers, and students themselves really know what's the difference and what to expect in an honors class and what those expectations would be. So our first group got together tonight, which was science. We started to talk about depth and complexity and pacing, what that would look like at an honors course, and the next step then would be to establish those course description guides so that we are all aware of what an honors course looks like at the middle school level. We'll use those course descriptions then to be the lens of how we look at high ability curriculum at the middle school to ensure it is meeting that pacing, complexity, and depth. So I did want to provide some updates on where we are with high ability curriculum implementation. So the first thing we needed to do was get the services aligned. And so as we looked at those tiered levels of service, basic classroom differentiation, clustering, and then the self-contained program, we needed to ensure that our building principals all understood the benefits of a cluster classroom. So there is a misconception with cluster classrooms that it's tracking. When a cluster classroom is done correctly, you have a high ability cluster, which would be students are identified as general intellect, math, or ELA, who are clustered together. We tend to keep those clusters around 6 to 8 kids. So if we have a building who has more, we would divide out and have 2 clusters. Some buildings have so many that they do have 3 clusters across different classrooms. But then where the difference comes in, so it's not tracking, is if you have a group of high average kids who are not in that same class. So you are taking those kids who are high average, putting them into another classroom, giving them the ability to soar, rise to the top, and really separating those 2. So there is a common misconception with clustering that it is tracking, but there is very clear differences in between cluster classrooms and tracking. So we looked at clustering just because of the cost effectiveness. We can train teachers. We've asked that those teachers commit to being our cluster classroom teachers for 3 years, so that we can invest the training in them, get them the materials that they need, and have them have an opportunity to be successful. And so I think the most important thing to note is that it's one of the most cost-effective ways to service our high ability kids. And so we are able to then put the high ability curriculum into those cluster classrooms. So as far as where we're at with the high ability curriculum roadmap, we started, as I said, with junior grade books. All teachers, grades 1 through 6, by the end of this year will be trained in grade books, and we'll have those materials to use with their English language arts and their general intellect students. At Roosevelt, we identified the curriculum to be used there, so they're using the Department of Ed high ability unit, either English, Beast Academy for math, and then most of their science and social studies is an integrated approach through some problem-based learning, as well as some traditional content. We do have multiple teachers in the district piloting No Red Ink, which is a grammar, vocabulary, writing program. And so Tim and Eliza both have No Red Ink going in the classroom. Tim's kids are out of control with getting their topics mastered. They're just loving it, I guess. And we have other teachers, other cluster teachers taking part of that, and then we have a middle school teacher piloting it as well. So as I said, as we're working forward this year, we will be looking at curriculum for our middle school honors classes and our Rising Scholars program, which was postponed as we're looking at it for this year. As we're moving forward, then math would be the next big one to tackle with our 1st through 6th grade classrooms. This year was a new math adoption year for our teachers, so not to overwhelm them, we did not add a specific math high ability curriculum. We are looking at what does math expressions have to offer as far as rigor, and see if there are enough materials and supplementals in there to differentiate for our high ability students. And down the road again, as I said, we'll be looking at those high school honors courses. So we have a few upcoming events in high ability. On November 3rd, we're going to welcome Dr. Sylvia Rim to our district. Dr. Rim has served as a contributing consultant to the Today Show for 8 years. She is a leader in child psychology. She works with gifted and talented students and families and teachers across the globe. She is the author, as you can see there, of Why Bright Kids Get Poor Grades and What You Can Do About It. And that will really be her focus for the evening, is underachievement in our high ability kids. She has served as a National Association for the Gifted board member and has also won the Lifetime Achievement Award for national from the National Association. So we're very excited to welcome Dr. Rim on November 3rd from 6:30 to 7:30 for our parents. We have also partnered in collaboration with Tippy Valley, West Noble, Wawasee, Concord, and Fairfield to invite their families as well to share in the cost, to bring that cost down to each school district to invite this national consultant here. Then on the 4th, she will be presenting a full day workshop to some of our teachers targeted in grades 5 through 12. About grade 5 is where we start to see some of the underachievement and motivation issues start to bubble up. And so we are hopeful that we can send at least 10 to 20 teachers from Elkhart to that full day workshop. In March, then, we will host our prospective family night for students who'd like to attend Roosevelt, so they can take a tour, get to meet the teachers, the principals, the community, and have an opportunity to really engage in some questions and answers during that time. And then, as I mentioned, in April, we'll have that newly identified high ability parent night. So, what questions can we answer, or myself, or take back to our guiding coalition to have a conversation about?
Something I would say as you're pondering the question is, Lisa shared that there is not a federal mandate nor federal money, but there is a state mandate. It's an unfunded state mandate for us to provide high ability education. When you're looking at that dollar, although there's a mandate, that's the money the state gives us to work with those 1,400 students. So I have to tell you, I love seeing Eliza and Tim here. We have amazing teachers, and we have some amazing teachers who have gone and gotten their high ability license since Lisa's been here. But we interviewed Lisa when we, as a school, were given the green light by this board to get a director of high ability. And we hit the jackpot. What happened is Lisa came in during the height of COVID when we weren't here. She met with every principal, she met with the coordinators, she met and developed a guiding coalition, and she worked from how to not have any kind of coherent curriculum that was across the district and started putting it together in elementary. The cohesion that she is bringing to High Ability is so impressive. I'm very excited that we're also doing things at the same time, like her contacts with Dr. Rim. We've got school districts asking to come because she is such a big deal. So the knowledge that, and I ran High Ability in another district, the knowledge that Lisa has in her pinky outshines anything that I could think about. And I know Dr. Tallheimer's background, and I know he has a lot of understanding and background in High Ability. But just as I think about where we are in High Ability, the blood, sweat, and tears that Lisa has poured in and the teachers have poured in to get us where we are is pretty impressive in an extremely short amount of time. So I wanted to put my 2 cents in there where I can, and now I will shut up, and that's why she's doing the clicker.
So $81,000 does not seem like a lot of money to run the High Ability program. Myself and a couple other members of the board are going to be meeting with our state representatives and senators in the coming weeks. Should we be talking to them about pumping more money into High Ability? I mean, if they're giving us a mandate that it must be done.
Well, yeah, that feeds right into my question. Can you give me a thought process of why it's so underfunded?
And I probably would answer that back with the question of we have so many other unfunded mandates, it's hard to pick which one to start with. Right? And I'm not trying to disrespect anyone. The issue is that this is a mandate. Here's the amount of money you can have. The reason we have so much more money in special education is because it's a federal mandate. And then federal money comes through the Fed into the state and then out to the school district. So as we look at that funding, there's not the same avenue for funding to it. Same thing when Beth is here and talking about English language learners, there's some expectations. Well, that's federal and state level, but there is not a funding mechanism to add extra dollars.
So I'm not going to ask for a 5-minute, but can you give me a 30-second elevator pitch to give to the state legislators when we talk to them about why this is so important, why the funding is needed?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is the misconception that High Ability is a privilege when it's really just an academic need. These students need every level of support that any student in special learners would need as well. So they need the social emotional support, the academic support. They need teachers who are trained and licensed in front of them. And so I think that's where it comes down to is the misconception that this is not a privilege. This is who they are, and this is what they need.
Just a special learner has needs in a certain classroom, so this, the High Ability, and it takes special teachers, curriculum.
So the kids that Tim and Eliza are teaching are at the end of the spectrum that our kids in the same classroom would be in the intense classroom who have a very different curriculum.
Right.
A couple of years ago, we had a presentation with a couple of youngsters who were going out to California. If you remember right, they were at the Science University and they were studying rotations with the university. The amount of money that we invest in High Ability in the state of Indiana keeps those High Ability students coming back to Indiana, and we don't have to drain. So if we can have a higher expectation, and then that draws in more of students at that level, with Purdue University being here as a science and technology leader, there are just so many amazing things we could do if we continue to invest in those High Ability students at some level that's a little different than that.
I think a misconception is, like you said, if we don't invest, we can lose these students as easily as we can lose any other students.
Excuse me here. Did you say there were 1,400 in the program?
1384, I think. Yeah, 84.
Well, mathematically, that figures out to be $57 per student, which seems like kind of a pittance. How much extra would you think it would take to, I mean, is that a $200, $300, $400 bump per kid to do a,
That would definitely be a number I could work with and try and figure out and send to you. I know, a lot of the curriculum that Tim and Eliza have, we were blessed with some ESSER funds to fill in those gaps so that we were able to fund some of it through that. We've also funded some through the High Ability grant. So break down as far as what curriculum ideally to have in front of the kids and how much that would cost per student. I think something like that.
Yeah, because every time you have a mandate, there's a cost that goes with that of some kind, right, you know? And, $58 per student, well, it seems like a pretty thin margin.
Some kudos to the DOE who had the ability for us to write a grant. Lisa wrote a grant, so several of our teachers were able to get their high ability endorsement at no cost to the teacher. So there are some other things that are going on at the state level that are. Everything at the DOE is important. I should say that. If you don't have any other questions, I think that's important.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna break for 10 minutes. We'll be back at 7 o'clock. Whoa, hold on.
And I have a couple. This morning. Let me just snap my fingers. This is the mock-up. I've got lots to pass out. I also have an update for your handbook, and,
I trust that you, sir.
this is the communication that Dr. Captain from ULE that they asked me to give to all of the board. So I am, the other thing I gave you is I've asked, and I have not heard from anyone about attending the Region 2 meeting in next month. I knew that was a question, that's why I didn't bring it
You
up
need to hear what's going on up here.
this morning.
Did you send out a reminder email?
I did. I have. What?
Yeah. I read one, I read it once.
So it is Tuesday, November 16th at Christo's Plymouth. And dinner is at 6 and the meeting is at 7. What is the meeting? It's the Region 2 meeting.
The training.
When is that?
When is that again?
When is that?
Tuesday, November 16th.
Yeah. We haven't responded back to you yet.
Susan, I'm out of town that day.
Okay. What did you ask me?
What time?
Meeting, dinner at 6, meeting at 7.
Okay.
I don't know yet.
And what's the next thing now?
When we talked about next year's calendar, I asked about any changes, but I know that recently we've discussed, somewhere I must have dropped it, the board meeting calendar for next year. We were leaving work session at 6 o'clock. But you've also talked about going back to the third Tuesday. Is that to be on the draft calendar, or is that going to remain as needed?
As needed. As needed.
Okay. Didn't we talk about if we have an exec session that we move the work session to 6:15? We could do that.
I mean,
I just need to know what to put on it.
Going over, so I don't know if we wanna have that little buffer or.
I'm going to bring it to the board at the next meeting. It's just, it's gotta come twice.
Okay.
But I'm trying to wrap things up. So, I just didn't want you to think that that third Tuesday was gonna be on there. We've talked a little bit about it, but I just needed a yay or nay on that. So, okay. I'm good.
That's it.
You know.
Okay. one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Technology. Does anybody need any automobile insurance?
You ready?
Go ahead.
The Elkhart Promise. Every student is known by name, challenged and supported by highly effective staff, and in partnership with the community, will graduate career, college ready, and life ready.
So there's the invitation to speak protocol. If you wish to address the board at the end of the meeting, for any subject that is not addressed during the meeting, you can bring your white sheet up to Mrs. Ott. You will have 3 minutes. You will need to state your name, your address, and your relationship to the school system. I will caution you that you will need to address the board civilly, with respect and decorum, and you will not have any personal attacks against members of the board or members of the audience. Now, we reviewed our policy as to when the public is allowed to address us, and it's in our policy that whenever there is a item that is being brought before the board to vote on, that there will be time for public comment at that time as well. So now we have our moment of pride.
Kathleen? Thank you. She's not presented.
Well, don't worry.
So, I'm Katie Wong. I'm a senior at Elkhart High School, and I'm a part of the SSAC. So I'm here to talk about the art depot. One of the hidden gems of Elkhart High School is the art depot, located at the freshman division. Elizabeth Stokes has worked incredibly hard for several years, along with fellow ECS teachers, staff, and students, to bring fantastic programs and opportunities to EHS students and the Elkhart community. The Art Depot is the state's art-based after-school community for students. It is open Monday through Friday from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. The litany of events offered to students is staggering. Just a quick perusal of the calendar with activities like cupcake decorating wars, science Jenga tournament, movie and craft night, pottery painting, and so much more. The physical transformation of the Art Depot space over the past several years is remarkable, especially for anyone who saw the classroom 20 years ago. One can almost feel the palpable curiosity that rises from simply entering the room. In addition to the tangible qualities of the location, Mrs. Stokes has helped to create a true family atmosphere among the people who frequently visit the Art Depot. There is so much negativity in this world, and those who get involved with the Art Depot should be highly commended for generating such a welcoming, inclusive environment available to all of our students. The clubs offered at the Art Depot are free to high school students, and there is no registration or long-term commitment necessary. The classes offered for small costs are actually open to any interested community members in Elkhart too. Whether a person enjoys sports, music, art, or even cooking, the Art Depot can spark his or her interest. Through the Art Depot, people can meet new friends and have a creative outlet of expression, and discover and develop strengths they never even knew they possessed. We want our entire community to know about this exceptional part of Elkhart High School and experience it firsthand. To get more information, people can go to Elkhart Art Depot on Facebook or elkhartartdepot.com.
Thank you, Katie.
Thanks, Katie.
Good job.
Yay.
consent items?
So moved.
Second.
Do we have any discussion from the board?
Yes, one gift acceptance of a 1995 Chevrolet Impala Super Sport, estimated value of $4,000 to be used in our automotive cluster. From Terrence Johnson. Thank you, Terrence.
Thank you. Any other comment from the board? Do we have any comment from the public on the consent items? Seeing none?
Kelly Mullen,
Aye.
Evan Wolf,
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Doug Weaver,
Aye.
Troy Scott,
Aye.
Lucy Davis,
Aye.
Braxton Wilson.
Aye. Old business?
In front of your places this evening, I have the COVID update numbers from the weeks of October 11th and 18th, and you see that those have fallen a little bit from what they were the previous 2 weeks prior to that. So we have seen the general trend that we've seen, and I've heard from other superintendents we're seeing within the county schools that those have fallen. Would be curious to see, following this fall break, as we have had after other breaks, what may happen with those numbers, but we are in a good position with that. As we get to October 31st, that is when the governor's executive order would terminate for the month of October. And in November, we could revisit what we would be doing with our mask requirement based on whether that's renewed or not by the governor. Again, the ability for our students to attend school, and if they have to do minimal mitigation, and allowing students to ride the bus is a continued benefit for us being a mask district. And as we've also seen here, the number of close contacts are at the lowest point that they've been all year. So that's where we are relative to our numbers, and we can see what happens with the governor's activities over the next couple weeks and determine at that point what we would like to do going forward.
Any comments from the board? Any comments from the public? New business?
Wait.
Oh.
Dr. T, you said that, the governor's orders can't open or have, students attend school, don't wear masks, or like they're gonna see.
No, there are different procedures. So the state health department has given out guidance that if you are masked, then students considered close contacts reduced to a radius of 3 feet rather than 6, and you don't have to do the special mitigation to that larger radius, only to the smaller. And so for us, when we were having several students be close contacts when we were the 6 feet radius without masks, then that was impacting more students. And so the additional mitigation steps included separating those students at lunch, and the parents had to provide transportation. And that was a real burden for our families. And so by us being masked and we're down to the 3 feet circle for close contacts, that reduces the number of students who are impacted by that close contact.
But you took the wording out for transportation, when you took vaccinated versus unvaccinated out, you took the wording out for transportation, so then they could ride the bus as long as they wore the mask.
And we're vaccinated, right. That was the previous guidance, but now with it being that everybody's masked, that's what allows us to be able to not require students within the 6 feet to be able to have to do that.
So then you're gonna put the wording vaccinated versus unvaccinated back into the plan?
Potentially could be, depending, when we look at the guidance, when it says unmasked students, then it's very clear in the state guidance about what you have to do regarding that.
And I read that, it didn't say anything about transportation. I was just wondering if you're gonna put the segregation of vaccinated versus unvaccinated back into.
That would be a discussion I'd have with the board regarding going forward with that.
Any other discussion from the public?
How has that been working with athletics, indoor athletics? How they're unmasked?
Indoor close contacts, if they are close contacts indoor, not masked, then those follow the protocols of what's supposed to happen. If that's not happening, then that needs to be brought to my attention so I know.
Any other comments? Mr. Scott?
Okay, good evening.
Good evening.
Budget adoption is this evening. There are 5 resolutions. We'll go through them individually for the board to take action. I'm going to talk about them in a little different order than they're in your packet. So there is a chart that's the summary of all the funds that we budget. It's up in the upper right-hand corner. It says Form 4. Really is a summary of the dollar amount that we've been talking about and potential adopted tax levy. It's interesting that 2 lingering resolutions in here are the resolution to adopt the capital projects fund plan, as well as the bus replacement plan. Those are actually part of, as we talked about during the work session and then the hearing, that they're part of the operations fund. Yet we still have to adopt them separately from the total budget. And then there's 2 others. So with that, I would ask that the board take action on adopting the budget, which is the summation of all the funds that includes education, operations, referendum debt, debt service, pension debt, rainy day, and then the referendum operating fund. Mr. President, I would ask for.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion from the board?
I have a question.
Okay.
Can you explain the difference between the adopted budget column and the adopted tax levy column and why they're different? And why the operation is so different?
The adopted tax levy column is reflecting property taxes that will be generated to support the funds that receive those. The 3 debt service funds receive local property tax dollars as well as excise and financial institution tax.
So I guess my question is, why aren't they the same? Why are the amounts different?
Because this is just reflecting, this is the state's form.
Okay.
This is just reflecting the property taxes that would be raised.
Right.
Doesn't include then the corresponding excise, commercial excise, and financial institution tax.
Okay.
So those are extra dollars, and they are proportional.
So,
The county will figure those.
okay, but the operation fund there's a significant difference there compared to the other funds, so is that the same reason, or is there something else going on there?
If you recall, during the presentations that I provided, there's 2 funding sources because the operations fund is a pot.
Right.
They took capital projects, transportation and bus replacement, those all receive property tax dollars, and they combined them into operations. But they also took portions of the old general fund that the state considers overhead, so like expenses in the school board and the business office, the superintendent's office, those are also in the operations fund. The state provides us still one basic grant funding that they require us to receive from the education fund. So then we transfer a like amount.
Okay, so that's the the difference is the transfer.
Right, that's the other piece.
Okay.
As you recall, the state, shortly after moving to this new method, came out and said, don't transfer more than 15%. Just in the last week, we received notice from them. They calculated that the transfer for us is 12.8%, which is an indicator that we run fairly lean compared to some districts. So, great question.
Great, thank you, appreciate that.
Yeah.
For the minute, can you clarify which one?
We're gonna do them one at a time. So I've asked for the Form 4.
Okay, all right, one at a time.
That's the top one. Thank you.
I'm good.
Okay, any other discussion from the board on this one?
This is budget Form 4, correct?
Right.
Correct.
Page 60.
Do you have any discussion from the audience? Seeing none?
Kelly Mullen,
Aye.
Babette Bowen,
Aye.
Ann Sondervellen. Aye. Doug Weaver,
Aye.
Troy Scott,
Aye.
Stacy Davis.
Aye.
Rocky Enfield.
Aye.
The next I will ask for action on is the resolution to adopt the 2022 capital project plan. So again, it's a piece of the operations fund. The total for that was just over $16,000. It's a 3-year plan. There's information on the website, that's required by law. As far as public notice, if you go to administration and then business office, you can find those under there. So with that, Mr. President, I would ask for approval of the CPF loan.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion from the board? Do we have any discussion from the audience? Seeing none?
Kelly Mullen,
Aye.
Aye.
Ann Von Aye. Doug Weaver,
Aye.
Troy Scott,
Aye.
Casey Davis,
Aye.
Rocky Hanson.
Aye.
Great. Let's move next to the bus replacement plan. Again, this is on our website. The bus replacement plan for 2022 is $1,602,000. And we have to, display a 5-year plan that's on our website. But the district, we still budget, for the full replacement of our fleet, which is a 13-year cycle at this point. So with that, Mr. President, I would ask for approval of the bus replacement.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion from the board? Do we have any discussion from the public? Seeing none?
Kelly Mullen,
Aye.
Aye.
Ann Von Aye. Doug Weaver,
Aye.
Troy Scott,
Aye.
Casey Davis,
Aye.
Rocky Hanson.
Aye.
Next, I'm gonna move on to the tax neutrality resolution. And what this is at the time that the state encouraged, schools to buy out pension liability. So, days gone by, there used to be retirement language in teaching contracts. And that was a liability that the state thought schools should have, so they encouraged everybody to borrow. But they also said, you can't raise your overall tax rate. So tax neutrality means that the amount of property tax that it takes to help pay for pension bond payments has to be reduced. We used to get a decide between CPF, transportation, but since those funds have all been consolidated, today it's the operations fund. So if the tax, if the property tax amount is $2.5 million, they'll reduce $2.5 million from the operations fund. So this just allows the state to include that when our working budget. President, we approve the tax neutrality resolution.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion from the board? Do we have any discussion from the public? Seeing none?
Mullen,
Aye.
Babette Bowling,
Aye.
Ann Von Aye. Doug Weaver,
Aye.
Troy Scott,
Aye.
Casey Davis,
Aye.
Rocky Hanson.
Aye.
Thank you. And then the final resolution this evening is the resolution to reduce budgets. This is something we do every year. So when the state contacts me and they start working the budget, it will make reductions. To give you a sense of how much, last year, we advertised for 2021, and they worked the budget, they reduced it by 4%. So, this just grants the CFO the ability to make adjustments, because you have a very limited window of time. I think they give us 10 days, once they send us the draft, to respond and make requests for adjustments. So, with that, Mr. President, I would ask that we adopt the resolution for these budgets.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion from the board? Do we have any discussion from the public? Seeing none?
Kelly Mullen,
Aye.
Babette Bowling,
Aye.
Ann Von Aye. Doug Weaver,
Aye.
Troy Scott,
Aye.
Casey Davis,
Aye.
Rocky Hanson.
Aye.
Moving, thank you. Moving on to the financial report, through September. Business office would like to report, cash balance at the end of September 2021 is $33,946,191.43. That is a nice improvement over the prior year. Both education fund and operations fund that are in your packet are ahead of last year. However, our enrollment count is down some from the amount that they started funding us on in July, and so we'll see a adjustment down in funding in November, December. We're able to get the enrollment software to work. We're still struggling with the final number from us, but we're doing okay. So that concludes my comments on the financial report.
Thank you.
Finally, for me, the insurance experience. You can see that September returned to a more normal pattern. Slightly less claim cost than the same month in the prior year. Year to date, we're significantly higher, but the COVID year with non-emergency activity pushed off, we're much higher this year. We're still almost $50,000 ahead of expected claim costs. So that's good. So that concludes my comments on the insurance.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Kara Goff.
My name is Kara Gio. I live in Elkhart.
Sorry, I mispronounced it.
Oh, it's okay. And I have children that attend Elkhart. And the question, what I want to ask about is the ESSER 3 grant. And Elkhart is awarded over $26 million. And what comes with it is CDC guidance, which includes universal and correct wearing of masks, contact tracing in combination with isolation and quarantine, in collaboration with the state, local, territorial, and tribal health departments, diagnostic and screening testing, and an effort to provide vaccinations to the school community. How fast it goes. This grant goes until September 30th of 2024. I also ask, is ESSER funds used to support vaccination efforts? Yes, it can be used in a wide variety of ways to support vaccination efforts. I look further into the 50-page document of the state plan for the American Rescue Plan Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund from the U.S. Department of Education, and it's in table S1 where it discusses nurses. It states in there, COVID-19 schools have needed to supplement their nursing services, and many more responsibilities were added onto the nurses' workload. Assessing, referring, and tracking ill staff students, identifying close contacts, isolating and quarantining identified persons, reporting positive cases, close contacts, the Indiana Health Department, Department of Health, school portal. So this is the part that I was concerned about. These will all continue in the next school year with additional responsibilities of assisting and or administrating vaccines to students, as well as testing and tracking the vaccine status for staff and students. I'm not aware of any school nurse that provides vaccinations to our children. Then you hop over to the CDC site and how schools can support COVID-19 vaccinations. We can set them up at clinics at your school, which can be given. Nurses stations may offer vaccinations throughout the school day, which we're seeing over in South Bend. And here's arm school staff with resources for answering general COVID-19 vaccination questions. So they recommend using teacher workshops, staff meetings, and newsletters to promote school staff involvement in COVID-19 vaccination efforts. Another one of a child taking a selfie of themselves saying promote vaccine confidence among students, parents, and guardians. And they're encouraging teachers and staff to share their COVID-19 vaccine stories on social media or throughout school. My first grader should not know the vaccination status of her teacher. I should not be hearing about vaccinations that had parent-teacher conferences. I know I'm about out of time, so I'm just gonna say that to my first grader, I'm pulling from the school system. I am not okay with that, but I do wanna know where the school system stands on vaccination clinics in school, because if they come into our school, I'm also gonna pull my 8th grader. Thanks for your time.
Jamison Halverson.
Hi, my name is Jamison Halverson. I'm a senior at Elkhart High. Today's topic is gun control in our school. So, hi, my name is Jamison Halverson. I'm a senior at Elkhart High. Just in the past 2 months being in school, there have been many fights. Many fights that involve weapons. There's been 2 guns inside the school that I know of. I'm wondering how you guys are going to do something moral and civil about this. You have all of us wear masks that are supposed to protect us from COVID-19, but when there is a gun within school walls, there is no question, there is no statement or anything out in the public. My question is, when there's an actual danger involving a weapon carried by another student, why are the other students and teachers not aware of what's going on in their school? Because seniors and juniors cannot leave to go get lunch because it's a safety issue. But when a gun is seen in school walls, loaded or not, there is no word about it. We as a student body have to find out all of our information on our own. I understand that there can be twisting sometimes, but it's still an issue that when this happens, we and our parents are not informed about it. October 18, 2021, there was a fight with 2 boys. A gun was dropped on the floor, maybe loaded or not. August 31st, 2021, someone got arrested with a gun and was in a fight. I'm not saying when every single fight has happened or occurred. Monday, September 16, 2021, I personally went to the principal myself with my friend Zoe Ortiz, giving them all the information about how someone was threatening to shoot up our school. Joke or not, nothing happened. As a community, we need to come together to think about how to fix situations like these. This is a situation where it falls more on the community that's leading their kids to come to school with a weapon. I don't want my future to come off as is to get metal detectors and searches. That will cause a lot more trouble than it needs to be. So this needs to be handled because sometimes I really do get afraid for stepping into my building that I know that is my school. My friend Holly recently sent me a picture of someone threatening to shoot up the freshman academy. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to happen as well. All I'm asking is the school board of Elkhart Community Schools, how are you going to help look out for the other students and teachers when there's a weapon inside the school? It doesn't matter if the security guards or police officers to keep us safe. These fights are in the middle of the school where everyone can see. I really don't think someone's going to care if they find out they have a weapon on them. So if someone comes in, a visitor comes in and asks, you guys ask them, what are they here for and why are they here? Just in case if they do try to shoot up the school. Are we going to be put on lockdown if another student gets injured from a gun dropping on the floor from a fight, or are we just going to go on with our day like nothing happened? What I'm asking is, as a school board, we are your future. We are your future in this life. I'm worried, and I want to know how this is going to become differently, responsibly, respectfully, in a better place and a safer school for our students of the upper community.
Good job.
Joe McDonough.
Hi, Jody McDonough. I live in Brooksville. My son is a senior at the high school. I'm just going to cut right to the chase. And it was already just briefly discussed a few minutes ago. But once again, you left your decisions about the mask mandate open-ended. It is time to be upfront and definitive about how you will be proceeding from here on out with the mask mandate that is still in place. At the August meeting, I believe it was stated that you would be revisiting this mandate each month based on COVID numbers, but you set no other parameters and have no clear end game. I feel your decision was made solely on your personal opinions, how much money would be lost per student if you didn't pursue a mask mandate, and you gave no real rationale based on scientific research or data from the plethora of well-known studies or doctors outside of the information from the one-sided mainstream media. To quote Dr. Joseph Lapido, Surgeon General of the state of Florida, we're going to be very explicit about the differences between the science and our opinions, he said. What's been happening over the past year is that people have been taking the science and they've been misrepresenting it. It's been unclear when the discussion about science ends and discussion about how you feel about the science and what you want people to do with the science begins. By the way, Dr. Lapido is no fly-by-night physician. He earned his MD from Harvard Medical School and his PhD in health policy from that university's Graduate School of Arts and Science. That said, we are done with fear. We parents are done with not having the option of whether our children, not yours, wear a mask. We are done watching you and other public officials like our governor attend local meetings, fundraisers, state conventions, and other social engagements maskless while you continue to suffocate our children. We are done with your hypocrisy and your do as I say, not as I do attitude. My disappointment in many of your actions knows no bounds. Teachers are done as well. I will speak for and advocate for them since there are many who won't speak out against this mandate due to fear of repercussions from doing so. They want to teach, not have to be mask police in their classrooms, or worse, have to gaslight students to keep their masks on by telling them that they are going to kill a family member or spouse because their mask isn't properly covering their face. Oh yes, things like this are being said in classrooms across the board to children, and I for one won't stand for it. Since it seems you have no plan of action, I would like to recommend one for you. It is time to begin consulting boards and superintendents of Jimtown, Northfield, and Fairfield, who early on made masks optional and left the decision to the parents. Your discussions should include the parameters they have set for COVID cases, sanitation, and give you guidance for Elkhart Community Schools going forward. I then suggest you set a day and time to revisit this mandate after your research and report back to us, the people you work for.
Mrs. Gross.
Good evening. I am Misty Gross. I was here 2 weeks ago. I still live in Goshen. I am still a teacher at School Without Walls. Last Thursday, my colleagues and I attended a funeral for one of our colleagues who taught at the freshman position. He died of COVID, so I guess my timing is pretty good. As a group, we were sitting around at the church after his funeral. We came up with a conversation regarding the policies and lack thereof of what happens when a staff member passes away. I typed up a list. If I may, I'd like to give it to you. Please take my words into consideration. Thank you.
Lori Arnold.
Hello, Lori Arnold, Goshen. I would like to compliment you, first of all. I love that you guys have a microphone here so that it does make us feel like we are heard. I will say that, and I can hear other people. If I could maybe make a suggestion, it is so hard. I've been to a few of your meetings, and it's really hard to hear you guys. I know you have microphones, but a lot of times they're not close to you, or you don't speak close to them. So if you could maybe just speak up, or in some way so we can hear you a little better. I was going to talk to you guys on social emotional learning, but I kind of changed my mind because if you can tell by my shirt here, parents are being called domestic terrorists now. We have a president, so-called president, that has decided to call the FBI in on this. I was speaking at a Elkhart County Commissioners meeting where I posed the question, and I'm still waiting for my response from the sheriff about whether he was going to meet with the FBI regarding parents in Elkhart County, and whether he was going to go after them. It doesn't look like that's going to happen for the parents here. But I will tell you, I've been working with a really good group, and I've been learning a lot about what's been going on in the schools in the Elkhart County area with social emotional learning, DEI, pornography in our schools, the mask mandates, the coming vaccine mandates, all the stuff that I'm seeing going on. And I'm here to tell you, and I'm here to tell the parents that the time to put your children is now. We've already had parents that have had the police called on them for welfare checks as an intimidation tactic by a person from a school. Now, it is time for you to pull your children. The smartest thing that I heard the other day at a meeting was, it doesn't matter how much weaponry you have, how many skills you have, if they have your children, you're lost. That is the truth. Save your children. Keep coming to these school board meetings, and we're going to keep holding you accountable for what you're teaching and what you're doing to our children. But please, parents, save your own children from what they are doing to them. There are homeschooling groups popping up all over right now. Go to Purple for Parents Indiana. There is a Goshen citizens group. There's Save Our Kids Indiana. There are resources there. We will help you. We will guide you. Thank you.
Candace Russell?
Good evening, Candace Russell, Elkhart. I'm just going to read you a little poem. A visitor from the past. I had a dream the other night I didn't understand. A figure walking through the mist with rifle in his hand. His clothes were torn and dirty as he stood there by my bed. He took off his three-cornered hat and speaking low to me, he said, "We fought a revolution to secure your liberty. We wrote a constitution as a shield from tyranny. For future generations, this legacy we gave in this land of the free and home of the brave. The freedoms we secured for you, we hoped you'd always keep. But tyrants labored endlessly while your parents fell asleep. Your freedom's gone, your courage lost, you're no more than a slave. In this land of the free and the home of the brave. You buy permits to travel, permits to own a gun, permits to start a business or build a place for one. On land that you believe your own, you pay a yearly rent, although you have no voice in saying how the money is spent. Your children must attend a school that doesn't educate, and your Christian values can't be taught according to the state. You read the current news in a regulated press and pay a tax you do not owe to that thing called IRS. Your money is no longer made of silver or of gold. You trade your wealth for papers so your life can be controlled. You pay for crimes that make our nation turn from God. You've taken Satan's number and traded in your name. You've given government control to those who do you harm, so they can burn down churches and seize the family farm, and keep our country deep in debt and put our men in jail, harassing fellow countrymen while corrupted courts prevail. Your public servants don't uphold the solemn oaths they sworn, and your daughters visit doctors so their children can't be born. Your leaders send artillery and guns to foreign shores, and send your sons to slaughter fighting other people's wars. Can you regain the freedoms for which we fought and died, or do you have the courage to stand with faith and pride? And there are no more values for which you'll fight to save, or do you wish your children to live in fear and submission as a slave? O sons of the Republic, arise and take a stand. Defend your Constitution, the supreme law of our land. Preserve our great Republic in each God-given right, and pray to God to keep the torch of freedom burning bright. As I awoke, he vanished into the mist from whence he came. His words were true, we are not free, but we have ourselves to blame. For even now as tyrants trample each God-given right, we only watch and tremble, too afraid to stand and fight. If he stood by your bedside in a dream while you sleep, and wondered what remains from the freedoms he fought to keep, what would be your answer if he called out from the grave? Is this still the land of the free and the home of the brave? God bless you, and God bless the Republic.
Sarah Howard?
Hi, my name is Sarah Howard. I'm a parent of a first grader at Woodland Elementary. And I came to the board meeting a couple weeks ago to talk about the kids care site closure at Mary Daly School. And kids care is operated by Boys and Girls Club. So I just wanted to give a little bit of an update and say that while the site is remaining closed at this point, I do know that by coming and bringing the closure to the attention of school administration and the board members, that there has been follow-up. The principal of my daughter's school has been a very strong advocate along with me, in problem solving. I even got a phone call from, Ms. Davis last night, letting me know some information that she had found out, which I really appreciated. Although the result isn't what I had hoped for the families that have been impacted, I do know that there is progress being made. I know that there was a meeting today with key people from school administration as well as kids care to come up with a plan to hopefully avoid this in the future or maybe resolve it so that something can still remedy. As we all know, child care is a huge issue in our community, especially for working families. Especially for working families with elementary age children. And the families didn't do anything other than accept the service that was offered to them prior to the school year. But we all know things happen. So I just wanted to say thank you to those who listened and did follow up and did return my call. Very diligent, persistent parent and advocate for the community. And sometimes that can be a little bit of a thorn in the side, but I do appreciate my voice was heard. And I plan to continue working on this issue. The other thing that I wanted to say is that we are thankful for the experience that we've had with Woodland Elementary so far. I really appreciate all of the other parents who've been here talking about, and teachers talking about such important issues. But our experience at Woodland with our staff has been phenomenal. We couldn't ask for a better principal, better teachers. Our daughter looks forward to seeing them every day. We're excited about the donation that was made for playground equipment, that the kids have something to look forward to. It shows that the community also cares. And the other thing that I wanted to say is just an acknowledgement of all of the teachers. That last board meeting I came to, there was such emotion, and I don't know if they hear it often enough in a public forum that families and parents are so grateful that they choose to still teach every day. Spite of the challenges, pandemic, we're grateful that our daughter gets to go to school every day, even in these really challenging times. So we just wanted to say thank you to those teachers, and they are appreciated, and they're worth everything that they're asking for and more. So that was it. I had more, but 3 minutes up, so thank you.
Thank you. Philip Crawford.
Evening, Philip Crawford, Goshen, Indiana. I'm with Purple for Parents, and I'd like to start by reading from the Constitution of the United States, Amendment number 14, Section 1 says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. And of the state wherein they reside, no state shall make it or enforce any law which shall abridge privileges or immunities to citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction equal protection of the laws. I want to focus on those 3 words, life, liberty, and property. We're, like it or not, we're in a country right now where life, liberty, and property are being taken and thrown and stomped down by our strong-armed, disgusting, sick, twisted government. Sorry if you voted for Joe Biden, but he's taken away liberty, life, and property. As we speak. And unfortunately, it's trickled down because we have governors who are afraid of his ridiculous mandates, vaccine mandates, trying to put companies under, try to scare school corporations. Well, I would encourage you guys, don't listen to our governor, don't listen to our president. You know why? Because we, the people of this country, have more power than they do. Why is that? Well, you see, because God hates the idea of communism. God hates the idea of saying that everybody's got to abide by this certain standard. And, you know, God does not like the idea of you've got to put masks in everybody without the opportunity to choose. You've got to put masks on everybody without the opportunity to choose. And unfortunately, the school corporations have just, quite frankly, cowered back, and it's time to stand up for life and liberty. Now, from a Christian point of view, Bible and what religious people, we we stand on is where the Bible tells us to fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called thee by my name. You are mine. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, they shall not overflow you. When thou walkest through the fire, you shall not be burned, neither shall the flame kindle upon thee, or harm thee. So it's time to stop living in fear. Parents, they are done with it. We are absolutely fed up with this pandemic nonsense of the last year and a half. Quite frankly, I mean, I don't have time to go into all the details, but a lot of this is a bunch of lies and a bunch of control. And if we don't get a hold of this thing now, it's going to destroy our young generation. I see this young lady coming up here. They are the future of our generation, as she said. And we've got to save them from this communistic, ridiculous, strong-arm government, and it's your decision. Be on the side of liberty, be on the side of freedom, be on God's side, ultimately. And just know that we, the people, are with you if you stand on the side of liberty. God bless America.
Angela?
Angela Whitlow, this is my address. I never write anything, I probably should. I came to talk about parent-teacher conferences. I attended the Freshman Academy, and I just wanted to say how great it was over there. The teachers did a really fantastic job. They were all centralized in one location. They were readily available, you know, besides, you know, going and taking their breaks. Some of them didn't even take breaks. So it was really nice, and I really liked their setup. I went to the high school, 10th to 12th building. It was a little different experience, so I will address that with the principal. But one thing I noticed is that, unfortunately, these teachers for parent-teacher conferences are here from like 7:30 a.m. until almost 8 o'clock at night. They don't have much of a break. I know a lot, or a few of the teachers, not a lot, a few of the teachers I talked with, they didn't even take a lunch, or dinner, I should say. So that's something that concerns me as in regards to our teachers, because they deserve that. They deserve a break. I mean, that's a long day for anybody, and I know we have to work out parent-teacher conferences and trying to get with people. Unfortunately, the teachers got the short end of the stick, or the staff that had to be there. That's a huge, long day. I know you can have lunch, this and that, but it's just kind of unfortunate for them. I feel a little bit bad for them. Then to address what I had spoke earlier with Dr. T about the bus guidelines for mask wearing, I emailed you guys back September 1st, back and forth, quite a few emails, and gave you some scenarios and some recommendations and what the CDC and Indiana Department of Health guidelines were. It just does not make sense to me, and I've shown you, I can resend you guys the email if you need it, if you deleted it because you just don't want to hear about it. But it frustrates me because there's nowhere in there does it say that you cannot be on transportation. So you're taking kids away from education when nowhere on there does it say that you cannot be on transportation with a mask. It also, I just read the updated guidelines, 1019, it says that for higher education, if you're in close contact, you should quarantine no matter if you're wearing a mask or not. So there's just different guidelines everywhere. It's just starting to get frustrated by everybody. I understand the idea of masks. I've always said that. I understand it's a hard decision, but at this point, you can make up your own rules and you're just choosing not to, right? And so we just need to keep our kids in school, but you guys need to do guidelines and come up with something. Thank you.
Dr. Mark Whitlow.
Who we like here.
Hello.
Dr. Lindholm,
Yes.
you'd like to address the board?
Yes, I would. Thank you.
State
I
your
want to
name,
sincerely.
address.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, this is Dr. Mark Lindholm. I live at 54541 Hunters Court, Elkhart, Indiana. I have 4 children that have benefited from Elkhart Community Schools, the youngest of which is still high school students. Can you give me a thumbs up so you can hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. So I want to sincerely thank all the school board trustees for their dedication. I believe that you are good people trying to do the right thing. Unfortunately, there is a complete lack of parameters to guide you in your decisions pertaining to when to stop or start a mask mandate, other than the governor's executive order, which, as Dr. Thalheimer stated tonight, only dictates how we handle close contacts and social distancing, etc., but it is not a mandate, and it is also not enforceable. More importantly, during the last 2 school board meetings, I and others have presented the large body of scientific literature which clearly demonstrates that masks do not work to prevent the spread of respiratory viruses. In light of this information, and this is important, tying the use of masks to any COVID case numbers when the scientific literature clearly demonstrates that masks do not stop the spread of viruses is nonsensical and dangerous. To illustrate this point, let us imagine that the CDC advised you and the superintendent recommended that you mandate all students wear a purple shirt, and that purple shirts protect them from contracting COVID. Even though this is nonsensical, as we all know, purple shirts don't protect people from viruses, and worse, could give them a false sense of security, actually putting them in more grave danger. Furthermore, if the parameters set to determine the start and ending of this nonsensical use of purple shirts was somehow tied to COVID numbers, which could not possibly be affected by the use of purple shirts, this would be absurd. I argue that the same principle applies to the use of masks. More importantly, I and many parents don't plan to be silent any longer, as this issue is too important and is honestly so much bigger than masks. The reality is that our children are learning to act like humbled prisoners, and school administrators are becoming their arrogant prison guards. Parents are becoming demoralized, not under the crushing weight of the pandemic itself, but the draconian public health measures that I believe have been calculated to render our children more docile and amiable to control. I urge other parents concerned about the loss of our freedom to make healthcare choices for our children, or are concerned about the dangerous and intentional conditioning of our children to follow mandates without the use of critical thinking. Join us, parents that are speaking up. Now is the time. We have to stand for our rights and our children's rights before it is too late. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's starting already. It's going to continue to happen. If you don't want to have kids bleed out of your school system, you should probably start rethinking your policies. Second of all, they are going to homeschool. We're giving the kids the option to come out. I think a lot of kids want to stay in public schools. Make it possible for them to do that. Get rid of these ridiculous rules.
Right, yes, yes.
Before we start with our comments from the board, I'd like to ask you all to join us in a moment of silence in remembrance of our fine teacher, Timothy Jones, who tragically passed away. Thank you. So, I would like to celebrate the great weekend that the Elkhart Lions had. We had the ladies cross-country team and 3 members of the boys cross-country team all compete at Huntington College in the semi-state for the cross-country. We were very proud of those individuals. And we'd also like to congratulate the Marching Lions for their first trip to the state finals and the fine showing that they gave us and how they made us proud this weekend. The Lions have a lot to celebrate, and we need to remember that. Are there any other comments from the board?
I would just like to highlight a few things coming up in the next week or so. On October 30th, the high school is hosting Track or Treat at Rice Field. All the sports teams and clubs will have tables set up around the track. It's free to the public, so bring your kids. And it's supposed to run from 4:30 to 6 on October 30th. The EEF is hosting a resource fair at Tolson on November 6th. On November 5th and through the 7th, the high school play, Anna Green Gables, is going to be performed. And I think you can get tickets at the school. And then as well, I'd like to also congratulate all the fall athletes on their seasons and their conference and state honors. And the winter season is starting.
Doug?
Yeah, in following up with comments by Mr. Philip Crawford on the Bill of Rights, Indiana actually Constitution has a Bill of Rights too, and it has a very nice preamble to it, and it has sections, 37 sections. Section 31, no law shall restrain any inhabitants of the state from assembling together in a peaceable manner to consult for their common good, nor from instructing their representatives. That's us right here, okay? It's a good thing you're doing it. That's number 31, so there's 36 more in there that you as taxpayers and voters and stuff like that should reread this thing and go out and exercise those things. I would wholeheartedly encourage all of that. But anyhow, thank you very much. It's a good document.
Any other comments from the board?
And of course, I will echo that, we are doing the things that make the direction to moving towards revisiting our parameters that we didn't put into place. We have UV machines inside of our schools that are doing things that are killing the virus. That was something that was expected. We need to begin to acknowledge that everybody has an opinion, and as devastating as it is, life is an ebb and flow, and things do happen, and we do need to start moving, as Dr. Lindholm said, out of the fear spectrum and start questioning what we are actually representing at this moment. Because I myself, as a board member, am very confused and keep asking the same questions on where do we end this? Where does it stop? Demographically, we talk about all of these other areas, but we have elementary students at kindergarten level that cannot phonetically speak. We're doing things. We have great things in this school and great teachers that I can't believe the amount of work that went into the parent-teacher conferences. And another thing, parents, you see your child's grades. When you see those, it's your responsibility to meet with these parents, these teachers that are sitting there from 7 in the morning till 8 o'clock at night and talk to them. You cannot keep sending messages that you don't know why your children are feeling. When you have access to what you need to do and you need to discuss. And I know many of those teachers, somebody very close to me that is in her very first year, that put her heart and soul into exhausting herself to make sure that she was fully prepared. And the parents that needed to be there, they didn't come. They didn't come, but the parents that didn't need to be there were there. And our teachers need, if we're going to hold them accountable, and it's no secret that I am for mask optional, but I in turn am going to hold the parents accountable. If your child is failing, it's your responsibility to reach out to your teacher.
Is there any other comments from the board?